Welcome back, everybody, to the Rise in Realty podcast. My name is Nate. I am a licensed real estate salesperson here in the state of New York, serving the Buffalo and Western New York market. Today on the podcast, we're going to be talking about the recent changes to coming from the NAR lawsuit, the National Association of Real Estate Realtors lawsuit that took place and took effect on the 17th of August. It's a little confusing, but honestly, it's really not that bad. I do think that there are some things that are going to help agents and clients as a whole, and I do think that some things are just kind of pointless and not really doing much anything. But without any further ado, let's dive right into it. The biggest thing that's changing with the whole entire lawsuit is compensation and commission when it comes to sales transactions. Traditionally, how it worked was a seller would put their house in the market, a buyer would want to put an offer on it, it would get accepted, the transaction would happen, and at the end of the transaction, the seller will ultimately pay both the seller's agent and the buyer's agent. And that's where everybody hears that 6% when it comes to compensation. But what people didn't really talk about is how that 6% was divided up. Okay, so traditionally what happened was there would be a 6% commission on a transaction. So 6% of the sales price would go to the buyer's agents and the everybody as a whole, the brokerages, both brokerages and both agents. But it also didn't. What happened was that 6% was divided up between those four entities: seller's agent, seller's brokerage, buyer's agent, and buyer's brokerage. So technically, that 6% was actually 3% divided up. And then that 3% was further divided between each brokerage and each representing agent. The lawsuit stemmed from sellers thinking that there was no negotiation. And I think that's just poor communication on selling agents on side and not explaining things thoroughly. Negotiation and commission has always been a thing, and it's always been there. No one's never said it's not. It's always been a thing. With the new changes, sellers are not being held to that standard necessarily. We're not even allowed to post commission compensation in the MLS anymore when we put a property on. So that's kind of interesting. And I've seen a couple different ways of how agents are getting that commission out there and what the sellers are offering. So with that said, how is this going to be? What is going to change, and what are the negatives of this? I think that a big negative of this is it's going to be just another hurdle that buyers might have to jump over. If a seller's not willing to pay the buyer's agent, that means that the buyer is going to have to come up with that money to pay their agent, because no agent's going to work for free. There are a few that'll lower their commission or do no commission for friends and family and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, a real estate agent needs to make money in order to live and pay their bills. It's just how it is. So what we're seeing now is a lot of people are just doing 3%, which is what it's always been essentially. And sellers are pretty good at that. The seller, if you are looking to sell your home, it would be in your best interest, honestly, to offer compensation. Why? Because you want to get your house sold in the least amount of time. You want it to get up and get sold quickly. You want the transaction to be done with. Any real estate transaction is a very lengthy process, and it's a lot, and it's daunting, and it can be mentally and physically, exhausting. So offering compensation on the seller's side is a great way of getting your house sold. It's not because agents aren't going to want to show your home. Legally, we're not allowed to do that. We have to show if a buyer says, "Hey, I want to go look at this home," and there's no seller's compensation, that doesn't mean that we're not going to go show the home. We legally have to go show the home. That just means that I'm going to have a heart-to-heart with my clients and say, "Hey, the sellers aren't offering any compensation." So that means that at the end of the transaction, you're going to have to come up and we're going to have to negotiate that compensation for the time that I'm doing you guys, or giving to you guys to do this. Go look at homes, fill out the paperwork, do the contract, and negotiate and all that stuff. And that's where that other hurdle comes in, because the buyer is already having to come to the table with a bunch of money with the mortgage and closing costs to buy a home, and now they got to add on top of it another whatever percent that they're going to have to pay to their agent. And that's where it just makes a better sense for the seller, and it's much more appropriate, in my opinion, for the seller to just offer that, because it's going to help your property sell. The other thing that's happening with the new lawsuit is, legally, we are not allowed to even show houses as buyer's agents without getting something called an exclusive right to represent signed from buyers. That means that we are, and I think that this is a positive step forward, honestly. I think that this is where agents are going to have to start having these more heart to heart conversations with their clients, at a local coffee shop or something like that they office, about compensation and about all this stuff, because that we can't go and show properties without it. It's not the traditional way of somebody contacting a real estate agent and saying, hey, I want to go look at this house, the real estate agent setting it up, and they go on, and that being their first interaction. This sets the precedent of going and meeting your real estate agent, or the real estate agent going and meeting their client for the first time, like I said, whether it's over coffee or at the office, and you just narrow down, I think, what the client is looking for. And if it's a couple, you're trying to bridge that gap between it, because two people are going to want very different things. They might want similar things, but one person's going to want one thing and the other person's going to want another, and you're just going to have to try and figure out how to bring those people together. And then also you're going to have to talk about the compensation. And the best thing that I can recommend for new agents, or any agent really, is just reading whatever form you are using, because every form is going to be different no matter where you're at, for your buyer's representation. And make sure you know that through and through. All right. In ours that we're using for, in the BNAR, in the Buffalo Niagara Area Association Realtors, whatever it stands for, ours specifically says that brokerages are going to try and get the sellers to compensate. And if they can't, then it falls back onto the buyer. And that's in the contract. That's in the compensation paragraph. And I always point that out to my clients whenever I'm talking to them about compensation, that my brokerage is going to try and get this from the seller. But if we can't, it's going to fall back on you. And a lot of people, once I bring that to them and talk to them about it, they've been really cool with it. They understand it. So that's a positive. But I do think that this sets a precedent of going and having the conversations first and foremost, and meeting your clients and talking to them and getting a better understanding of what they're looking for in that first basis, that first meeting, so that you as a realtor can go back and look at the MLS and see all these different properties, and then start sending them stuff that is more appropriate to them. And then it's not, I don't want to, wasting your time is not a word that I want to say, but it takes a lot of the search and whatever, and you can be working on other stuff in the process, and it just takes a lot of that, wasted time is appropriate in this. And it sounds wrong, but I guess that's the best way to put it, of sending listings to your clients that they're not going to really like. You get that first meeting out of the way, and that's where you come up with a buyer's packet. You put in there all the information that you're going to need. It's a good idea to get a copy of their driver's license and some information that you can keep at the office, just for some safety's sake. Make sure that they understand what the pre-approval process is. Make sure that your clients are pre-approved. I think that's huge. And then, just like I said, come up with a form or something that you can kind of base off what they're looking for. How many rooms are they looking for? How many baths are they looking for? What setting are they looking for? What school districts are they looking for? So on and so forth, stuff like that. So I think that's where the buyer's representation and legally having to have that signed before we even go look at properties is going to be huge. There's been some confusion. It doesn't need to be signed for open houses. Anybody, if a door's open, if an agent's holding an open house, you do not have to have that signed. An open house, more so, is just an agent opening up a door and allowing people to come in free will and look at it. Buyers, when you're going and looking at open houses, the agent's typically not going to be, if it's slow and there's not a lot of people in there, then maybe, yes, they will follow you around and answer questions and stuff like that. But if it's busy, they're not going to be. They're going to give you some information about the house, and if you have any questions, you're going to have to go back and find them. Typically, they're going to be standing somewhere within the front door, or whatever door is being used as the main entrance. And that's where you're going to find them, and that's where you would ask questions. If there's multiple agents there, then hopefully they both have information that they can help you out with. But open houses, you do not need to have that exclusive right to buy sign. But I promise you, after learning about that, and there's still a lot unknown about it and how everything's going to work out. It's very new still. We're not even a month into the new rules. Um, but I think that it's honestly going to be beneficial. Now that I have a better understanding of it, I do think that it's going to be beneficial to real estate as a whole. Um, I do think that there's still some kinks that need to be worked out on the compensation end. But at the end of the day, I think that it's going to be fine. I don't think that there's going to be any issue with anything. I think that level-headed sellers and level-headed agents are going to be able to come to the table with an agreement of compensation for buyers agents. I think that they're going to understand that the buyers are already coming with this tremendous amount of money. It's more money than what they've ever spent on anything. Being a real estate agent, you're facilitating a financial transaction that is most likely going to be the biggest transaction of anybody's lifetime until they go through their next transaction. It could be a new family, a new married couple buying their first house together, their first house ever, and that's the biggest transaction that they've made at this point. Later on in life, they might want to upgrade. They've had family, they've got kids now, whatever. They're going to want to buy a bigger house, find something different, move closer to work, whatever. At that point, that's going to become their next biggest transaction, and you're facilitating that whole thing. So I think that unfortunately you're going to see a lot of agents fall off from this and just leave the industry as a whole. More of the part-time agents, and it's nothing against them. It's just a lot more to take on. But you are going to see a lot of agents shine through this, and people that can communicate well with their clients are going to be the ones that are on top and are going to go through this new transition with no problem whatsoever. I think that people are just going to have to learn a little bit how to have those more difficult heart-to-heart talks with people about compensation. Money is never a topic that anybody wants to talk about, but it's a topic that is going to be a conversation that's going to have to be had at this point. And you can either get good at it or you don't. It's kind of the gist I'm getting from everything. And I promise you, it's not that difficult. It seems scary, but it's really not. At the end of the day, buyers, everybody that I've dealt with, they understand that I'm not doing this for free, and I'm taking time out of everything else that I'm doing, from seeing my family, being home, being with my dogs, all of that, and going and showing these properties. And I thoroughly enjoy it. I love going and looking at properties. I love looking at old houses. It doesn't bother me. But they do understand at the end of the day that I do expect to get some financial gain out of it. And everybody's cool with that. And I just explained to them, like I said earlier, that this is the deal. And I'm not going to go specifically into it because I don't know how everybody's doing it. And I don't know what different regions are doing according to this. But my understanding is that when you sign that exclusive right to buy, you put down a certain percent, and you just express to your clients that we're putting this percent down here. That does not mean that if it falls back on you, that we're going to hold you to whatever this percent is. Okay? But if we put down a percent here that is less than what the sellers are offering, then I am only able to claim the percent that we agreed on. Okay? So just for simple numbers, if you meet with clients and you agree on putting 2% down for commission on your exclusive right to buy, you are only entitled to 2%. If you find a house and your buyers want to buy it, you put a contract, everything goes through, and the sellers are offering a 3% commission to you as a buyer's agent, you are still only entitled to that 2% that you originally agreed to. So that's where it's positive to kind of come up with a percentage that you think is appropriate and put that down and just explain what it means to your clients. Explain that this is not what we will necessarily expect from you. We can negotiate this later on, what you guys have to pay me should it come to that. We are going to try and get the sellers to pay this 3%. If they don't, then we can negotiate later on what you think appropriate commission is as to what I've done for you. And I think something else that buyer's agents are going to have to do, I think you're going to have to start documenting your time. and start just kind of um, express, having some sort of physical thing that you can show your clients, what you've done. Not it's there's a lot more than just sitting here. That it's a lot more than just sitting and looking at listings and going and open up doors for people. So I think that buyers agents are going to have to come up with a way, whether it's a package, a tiered package list or something like that, and offering it at different commissions for different things to different clients, just whatever. I don't know if that's even an appropriate thing to be doing, but I'm just trying to throw out ideas. Um, but you're gonna have to start documenting your time of like you spent this amount of time looking for listings to send to your clients. You spent this amount of time driving to different listings. You spent this much on gas, and you spent this amount of time negotiating and communicating with other agents about properties, and this amount of time talking with attorneys and inspectors and all this other stuff that comes in throughout the real estate contract transaction, so that you can provide info to your clients as to why you think that you deserve the commission that you're asking for, so on and so forth. How you do that, I don't know. I think that there's plenty of different ways, and I think everybody's going to kind of come up with their own way of doing it. I have yet to figure out a best way for me to do it, a best system, but it's still, like I said, relatively new. Like I said, we're not even a month into this yet, so there's still a lot of unknowns, I would say, but I do think that at the beginning of the year when this first came out, everybody was a little taken aback by it. But I think, 7 months, actually, we're 9 months, and it's September 2nd at the time of this recording. So 9 months into the year, and now understanding more about the NAR settlement, that I don't think it's as scary as what people initially thought it was going to be. I think that it's going to be a little bit of a hurdle for people, but at the end of the day, it's just another step that we're going to have to take, and it's really, really not that big of a step at all. So that's just my thoughts on it. I'd like to know what you guys think. Do me a favor, like and subscribe if you do like this podcast. Leave a comment down below, and let's have a conversation in the comment section. Give me your thoughts on everything. Agents, let me know what you guys are doing and how you're approaching different things. I think that's how we learn and grow as agents. By you out there might have a way of doing something that I might have thought about, and I might have something that I do that you might never thought about, and then we just kind of essentially trade ideas that way, and something that works a little bit better and a little bit more efficient, and so on and so forth. And I think it's gonna exceptionally help for new agents like me, that are still trying to find their way in the real estate world, learning different processes, that's a word, about how to go about doing things. And I think that seeing how other people are doing things, especially like I said, talking or documenting your time, I think that's going to be a big thing for any agent to learn, because this, like I said, it's a new thing. So if anybody's out there specifically is documenting their time, let us know how you're doing that, and then let's have that conversation, because I am genuinely interested in how you guys are documenting your time, if you are documenting your time. If you have any ideas in general about doing that, let's have that conversation. So with that, I do appreciate you guys. Like I said, leave any questions in the comments below, and I'll do my best to answer them for you. And I will see you in the next episode. Take care, guys.